Yukon for Monday, the 18th day of February, 2019. The matter before you this afternoon, Your Honours, is that of the swearing-in ceremony of the Honourable Madam Justice Suzanne M. Duncan.
Please be seated. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Kwanlundun First Nation and Ta'an Quechan Council. My name is Justice Vale, and I'd like to remind you that it's a cell-free zone, so please turn your devices off. We usually allow no pictures, but as you can see, this is a special occasion. So feel free to take photographs anytime you wish. So I'd like to introduce, I want to say this. Justice Duncan is the 12th judge to be sworn into this court since 1898. She is the 4th resident judge in Yukon to be appointed to the Supreme Court. And more importantly, she is the 2nd resident woman to be appointed as a Supreme Court judge. And you can clap for that. So I'd like to begin by introducing the bench. Chief Judge Peter Chisholm is on the far right. He's in sick bay, but he's come down for this occasion. Of course, Justice Duncan, as you know. Justice Campbell on my left, and to her left is Judge Ruddy of the Territorial Court of Yukon. And on the far left, the left wing, is a rare sighting of Deputy Judge John Faulkner. And he will give, thank you for your speech, John. So I'm going to, we all know the importance of family in these matters. So I'm going to take a minute out to just highlight everybody that's sitting in the jury box, which is a traditional place for people to sit in. So Ray Hall is Justice Duncan's partner. Just push your hand up there. He's got a nice fancy suit there. Mark Duncan, brother Mark Duncan from Paris, France. We offered video conferencing, but he wanted to be here. And Kazumi, his wife, Kazumi Duncan. Nice to have you here, Kazumi. And O'Connor down at the end there. Hello, O'Connor. Okay, well, bienvenue au Yukon. Paul Johnson, cousin Paul from Ottawa, and his wife Karen, great, and Leanne Johnson. Along for the ride, eh? For you. Virginie Giselle, a very old friend from a place called St. Mildred's, but that's a long time ago. Jane Ross, a friend from Toronto with her husband Cameron Menzies. And finally, David Finley, a friend from Toronto and a class at Queen's Law School. Welcome, everyone. So, you all want to know who this judge is. And you're all going to find out in great detail, because we have a number of people who are going to speak about her. But it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Justice Suzanne Mary Duncan, the 12th Justice to be appointed to the Supreme Court of the Yukon. I have to say that things have changed rather dramatically. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I wanted to say that the upside is that we don't have judges' meetings anymore in a telephone booth, and we have them actually in a conference room, and all 3 of us are in attendance, and lunch is provided. So that's the upside. The downside, of course, is that I'm a mere minority opinion. Becoming a judge is a long and arduous process, as many of you know. You start with a 4-year undergraduate degree at university, and then you have a 3-year law school degree, followed by a 1 year at least of a bar admission course and articling. And then you have a minimum of 10 years at the bar before you can even consider applying to be a judge. And then there is when I applied, it was sort of a 1-page application form, but now it's a monster, 30 pages, and you have to write several essays on why you think you should be appointed as a judge. Can you imagine? In any event. And then of course you make your application to the Judicial Appointments Committee, which is a local committee with a local judge and local citizens, people from the bar, and they then have to make a recommendation to the Minister of Justice. After that, the Minister of Justice has to make the appropriate appointment. And I'd like to thank the Minister of Justice, Jody Wilson-Raybould, that she was at the time, for making that appointment, making the last 2 appointments. In any event, that's a 20-year process before you get here. And no one knows the importance of the support of family and friends than a judge, because there's a certain loneliness to the job. And that's your role. It's not just today, and it's not just the past. It's into the future, because she will need that support throughout her legal career on the bench. Justice Duncan started off at a small school called St. Mildred's. I'm saying that several times because it's kind of funny, St. Mildred's. That's where she went to school, near Oakville, right? Yeah, Oakville, Ontario. But then she graduated from Queen's University in political studies in 1982, graduated from law, Queen's University in 1985, and now this is where she sets herself apart. She received her LLM, which is a Master of Laws, in 2000 from York University, specializing, you'll all be happy to hear this, in alternative dispute resolution. She was a partner in McCarthy Tetro, which is one of the larger firms in this country. She was one of the authors in a book called The Law of Privilege in Canada. Now, most of you are lawyers, but for those of you who are not, that's not privilege in the ordinary meaning of the word. That refers to confidential communication between a lawyer and her client. She also became appointed to the Department of Justice in Canada, and from 2006 to the present time, she was the Director and General Counsel in the Whitehorse office. And recently, she's proud to say, and I'm proud to say, she was the in-house counsel for the Kwanlin Dun First Nation. So that's the brief introduction. Oh, we have to swear.
I, Suzanne M. Duncan, do solemnly and sincerely use my glasses. I don't want to make a mistake.
It's not a disability.
I, Suzanne M. Duncan, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will duly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as one of the judges of the Supreme Court of Yukon. So help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations. Now I'd like to begin to introduce the speakers at council table, and I'll start with the Honourable Tracy McPhee, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Yukon.
Bit of a surprise because we weren't sure what order anything was happening, so Stay on your feet. Chief Justice Vale, Justice Campbell, Chief Judge Chisholm, judges, family and friends, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and Madam Justice Duncan. It is my profound honor to be here today representing Yukon government and a bar of which I am very proud to be a member. In early December last year, I met with then Minister Wilson Raybould, and among other things, we spoke about this appointment, which she had made only a few days prior. We also spoke about the appointment of Madam Justice Campbell. I thanked her for making those appointments so quickly, and also thanked her in particular for making this appointment. Having known Madam Justice Duncan for many years, I assured the Minister that she had chosen wisely, and that our legal and wider Yukon community would be very well served. While I'm very pleased and excited, Madam Justice Duncan, at your appointment, part of my current job means that I automatically think of the wake left by having one of our best legal minds and community advocates plucked from our midst. You have served us all as discipline chair of the Yukon Law Society, as chair of the Yukon Legal Services Society, as chair of the Employment Standards Board, as legal counsel for Kwanlundun First Nation, and as an advocate and pro bono and doing pro bono work to help vulnerable people. These are critical roles and positions that will need to be filled, I dare say, by more than one person. After coming to the Yukon in 2006, Madam Justice Duncan recognized early the opportunities available to us all as members of the legal community in a small jurisdiction. But more importantly, she recognized the impact that our profession can have on individual lives when we choose to serve, to use our skills to the benefit of our community and its people. In that way, Madam Justice Duncan has greatly impacted us all through her quiet and capable lead-by-example style. We ask a lot of our judiciary. They must bring extensive legal skills and knowledge, life experience, diversity, standards of excellence, and exemplary integrity. And perhaps most important, a true understanding of the circumstances and the impact of the cases that come before them, the humanity of the work that they do, and the decisions they make. Madam Justice Duncan today joins a bench, our Supreme Court, that clearly knows how critical that knowledge and experience is. Those who have come before her and those who form the current bench are all brilliant examples of such respect for the law and integrity. She has big shoes to fill, but will forge her own path with grace. It is really my honor to witness history in the making as we join the example across Canada's north with a female strong Yukon Supreme Court. And it's truly my honor to thank her for her commitment to our Yukon legal system and to wish her well as she rises to the challenges before her. Congratulations, Suzanne.
Chief Doris Bill, Chief of the Kwanlundun First Nation.
I feel like I want to grab a mic here. As Chief of the Kwanlundun First Nation, I am asked to speak at a variety of events throughout the year. But today, I am particularly honored to pay tribute to an amazing woman. She takes the next step in her life's journey. Madam Justice Suzanne. Your honors, colleagues, friends, and guests.
Madame Justice Duncan is no stranger to our community. In fact, until recently, she served as Quanlan Dunn's in-house counsel. While her time with us was limited, in part due to this new career path we are here to commemorate, we certainly would welcome her return in a heartbeat.
Not gonna happen.
I'm not done yet. Recognizing that is not likely going to happen. I will continue. It's fair to say Suzanne's stay with Quanlan Dunn was shorter than we all expected, but her impact was immense. In fact, I am told she hadn't even passed her probation period. And when I really had to think about it, I thought, well, what does it say about Quanlan Dunn's caliber of employees if they're coming to us to staff the bench? You left us in a better place due to the advice you have given, the work you completed, and the action that was taken. Less than 1 week before the call to service on the territory's judiciary, Suzanne helped Quanlan Dunn make history as the first self-governing First Nation to register settlement land at the Yukon Land Titles Office. Not an easy feat. We could not have achieved this new height without you. In my role as chief, I had the experience of working directly with Suzanne on several files and initiatives. I never once left a meeting feeling I was not fully briefed. And when questions remained on the table, answers shortly followed. Suzanne was always clear and concise, even when delivering information we may not want to hear. I would like to take this moment to thank Suzanne for the guidance and assistance you provided to me as I prepared to make the Quanlan Dunn First Nation oral submission to the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Public Inquiry. As many can understand, it is not easy when preparing for such an event. And to not get caught up in the harsh realities of the issues faced by your citizens you serve. Suzanne's oversight ensured the information presented was accurate and balanced, and as a result, we knocked it out of the park. The departure of Suzanne Duncan is a true loss for Quanlan Dunn. But the arrival of Madam Justice Duncan is a huge gain for the territory. Madam Justice Duncan, today I hold my hands up to you. And I say, buenas chis, Joey Dunn, for the service you have provided the Quanlan Dunn First Nation, and for the duties you are about to carry out for the Supreme Court of the Yukon. I know you will serve the people of Yukon well. On behalf of the Quanlan Dunn First Nation community, council, and staff, I wish you all the best, Madam Justice.
So I'd now like to call on David Christie, the Director of Yukon Legal Aid.
Thank you.
It's a hard act to follow.
I know. Thank you, Your Honor. And I'm honored to be speaking here today on behalf of Yukon Legal Aid, also known as the Yukon Legal Services Society. I know Madam Justice Suzanne Duncan primarily in two capacities. First, she served as a director for legal aid since 2010, and for the last few years, she was the chair of our board, and that was very much appreciated, all the work she did in that role. Second, I've worked with Justice Duncan on the Law Society Executive, which she served on from 2012 to the time of her appointment to the bench. And Suzanne, importantly, also served as Law Society Discipline Chair, as we heard, and I'm sure we'll hear more of. Justice Duncan has put a huge amount of time and energy into improving access to justice and the rule of law, including her countless hours of work on the Legal Profession Act and rules, access to justice and restorative justice initiatives with the Law Society and Legal Aid. She provided invaluable help with the development of many of our projects and administration at Legal Aid. I could talk for a long time about all that work, but just some of the highlights. She's provided invaluable help and guidance and mentorship with the development of how we administer complex, high-cost cases, our Gladio report writing pilot project, which is underway, as well as First Nations and community engagement. She's put in countless hours on all of those things and more. Also, another thing I'd like to recognize her for here is all the work she's done over the years with continuing legal education for lawyers, and we're hoping you continue that work in your new role. But she's provided help to lawyers as a mentor, as an organizer and a presenter for many CLEs, and she's been our go-to person for a number of topics, which we've all benefited the bar. And as I said, there's many more good things I could say about all the work she's done. But in everything she does, Justice Duncan has worked tirelessly. She's always been prepared for every working group, every business meeting, every board meeting, every strategy session. A lot of people just show up and mail it in, but Suzanne's always on top of things, and it does put a lot of pressure on people who are in committees and groups with her. You better not show up not prepared. And I never saw one instance in all the years I dealt with her where she wasn't prepared, and I think that you can't say that about many people, unfortunately. I think related to that, and even more importantly, Justice Duncan always reads and listens carefully with an open mind before making a decision. And, I think that's few people in life, or not enough people in life actually do that before forming opinions. And you've always impressed me, Madam Justice Duncan, with it ties with your preparation, but more than that, combining that with being open-minded and not having tunnel vision and really fighting against that. So that will serve you very well as a judge. And I'd like to say too, to members of my friends in the bar, that lawyers who appear before Justice Duncan had better be prepared. I think that standard, I'm sure, I can't see you changing now. So with affidavits and trial prep and not mailing it in if someone's appearing before you. Justice Duncan has shown tremendous compassion in everything she does. Just a few things that I've really been impressed with. Her compassion for legal aid applicants who suffer from FASD and other cognitive disabilities, those who suffer from mental illness, poverty, and victimization. Those are things that Suzanne showed tremendous compassion for. And something that a lot of people wouldn't think about is her compassion for lawyers who are helping those clients and dealing with vicarious trauma. That's something that I've been very impressed with through her mentorship and support for lawyers and legal aid lawyers and other lawyers who work with the Law Society as well, how much compassion she has for those of us that help. And so I would argue that compassion is the most important attribute for a judge to have, in my opinion. You have that. In closing, I want to say that we are very fortunate to have you appointed to our Yukon Supreme Court, Your Honor. And I sincerely wish you the best of luck in your new role.
Dave appears to have read my notes. He stole a lot of my thunder, so I was given 5 minutes, I should be a little less. Justice Duncan, congratulations. I've said this a couple of times shortly after you were appointed. You will make an excellent judge. The qualities that I've seen you possess, your dealings in the law society, which I'm about to go into, will make you a very excellent judge. Justice Duncan was an exceptional lawyer with extensive litigation experience. She was the author of Law and Privilege, which I had referred to without knowing it was your book back when I was in Winnipeg. It was a little dry, but useful. Justice Duncan was actively involved in the legal community, particularly with the Law Society, which is what I was speaking to. From May 2012 to November 2018, you were first vice president, discipline chair. That's a thankless job, if there ever was one, but one that is needed for the for any self-governing body. You handled those responsibilities, the hours that it required, without fail. The skills that you brought, not only as discipline chair, but on the committees that you served, particularly I'm thinking of the Legal Profession Act and the Rules Committees, which were, as Dave said, countless hours, countless very bad meals. I live on pizza, and by the time we were done, I was sick of it. However, having said that, Justice Duncan came to every meeting well prepared, having read or reread the act or the rules as required. Not only that, she had read other rules from other law societies, other jurisdictions, to bring additional light to what we were going to discuss that night. Because of that, the rules and the act are better than they would have been without her. Anytime we met as an executive or as a committee, Justice Duncan was an active listener. She would ask questions. As Dave said, she was unbiased in her opinions and would present thoughtful opinions after having listened to what people had to say. Obviously, very intelligent, hardworking, and her participation in our meetings made people come to better decisions than they would have. I can't think of any higher praise. I know Justice Duncan will bring these skills to her job, her new job as a justice. Legal community is probably poor without you being a lawyer, but probably better off with you being a judge. I can say that the executive and the Law Society miss you greatly, but I'm looking forward to appearing before you after having done my homework. And congratulations, Justice Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. I'd now like to call on Ms. Eden Alexander, who's representing the Canadian Bar Association, Yukon branch.
Thank you, Chief Justice, Justices, Judges, Justice Duncan. Seeing Madam Justice Duncan on the bench today reminds me of how much better than I, Suzanne, has always been at managing her nerves under pressure. Today, despite this momentous occasion and momentous personal occasion, as well as public occasion, Suzanne appears very calm and very ready, and that's very judicious of her. I was invited today to say a few words on behalf of the Canadian Bar Association, the Yukon branch, to welcome the Honorable Suzanne Mary Duncan as Judge of the Supreme Court of Yukon. And I am ever grateful for this opportunity to share a few reflections inspired by my relatively short time working with Suzanne and knowing Suzanne. For this is a very significant transition, personally and professionally, and for the justice system as a whole. For her personally, today marks a departure from the role of advocate to that of judiciary, a rite of passage that, as we know, is afforded to very few people in our profession. And her appointment is an acknowledgement of the trust and respect that Suzanne, as the other justices have, acquired over the course of her legal career. And a belief that, as she does so very well, Justice Duncan will dance through this change with stamina, with grace, and with great style. Many in this room, including myself, can attest, and have attested already, to the diligent and hard work that Justice Duncan has always devoted when she was practicing law, and has provided an example of putting her best self and her best work before the court. And as has been pointed out, I expect she will do nothing than proceed with such integrity in her role as a judge, and she will expect nothing less from us in doing so. I too shiver with fear. In addition to what this means for Justice Duncan personally, today is also an intrinsically public moment for all of us. Bearing witness to this appointment, for some, as has been mentioned, is a process of saying goodbye to her as executive of the Law Society, a member of various boards, to say goodbye to her as counsel or as colleague. For some, it's even to say goodbye to her as a formidable opponent and adversary across the room. About a year ago, when Suzanne informed me that she was leaving Justice Canada to work as counsel for Kwanlin First Nation, as her colleague at the time, I believe I responded in saying, "What excellent news for KDFN." What I did not say is, "I wish I had more time with you." And when later discussing her appointment to the Yukon Supreme Court with a legal colleague, his words were, "What a loss for the Yukon Bar." I have never talked to someone who did not express a desire to have Suzanne as part of their team. And the gap that her appointment leaves is great, but it is comforting, as has been expressed today, to know that her new role is to guide us all. I have often turned to Suzanne for direction, but now there is no ignoring the instruction of Justice. Celebrating this moment and this appointment today is also a public expression of the trust and hope and respect that we continue to have in her and the justice system at large. The expertise, integrity, and vision that Justice Duncan has demonstrated in her legal career represents a future of the Yukon Supreme Court that inspires confidence. We may wonder, how will she resolve issues brought before her? What direction will she take us as Yukoners? What will her interpretation of the law, her interpretation of justice be? And those answers are yet to be seen. However, myself, members of the Canadian Bar Association, those in the courtroom today and those watching from afar, I believe are very delighted that she has accepted this great responsibility as being one of our many guides. And we're all very lucky now to have her. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. And I now call on Mr. Alex Benita, Regional Director of Justice Canada.
Thank you, Chief Justice Vale, Justice Duncan, Justices, Judges, Duncan family, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege for me to be here today to represent the Honorable David Lametti, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, but also to be here on my own behalf as a longtime colleague of Suzanne's, to welcome her as the Honorable new Judge Justice of the Supreme Court of Yukon. So first, I'd like to share a few words on behalf of the Federal Attorney General. Suzanne, however, having been a long-time colleague of mine, I'd also like to say a few things on my own behalf. Madam Justice Duncan, on behalf of Minister Lametti, I would like to congratulate you on your appointment. To be named to the judiciary is a great honor and one that is well deserved. In the course of your remarkable legal career, you've had the opportunity to see Canada's justice system from several perspectives. You've also earned the profound respect of your colleagues. Since your arrival in the Yukon, you've played a prominent role in the legal community, and you've become a familiar figure in the Yukon courts. You've built an impressive reputation for your extensive knowledge of Aboriginal law and Crown liability, for your personal integrity, your clear dedication to the law, to public service, and to the implementation of modern treaties. Et maintenant, vous assumerez un nouveau rôle et des nouveaux défis à titre de membre de la magistrature. No matter how much courtroom experience a lawyer has, to be on the other side of the bench is a different matter totally. In this capacity, you'll be playing a vital part in making the rule of law a reality in our society. Clearly, this calls for a profound commitment to public service and the well-being of the community. Au nom du ministre de la Justice, je voudrais donc non seulement vous féliciter, mais également vous remercier d'avoir accepté de servir la population du Yukon à titre de membre de la Cour suprême. Madam Justice Duncan, on behalf of Minister Lametti, I offer you again my warmest congratulations on your appointment and my best wishes as you take up the duties in this important office. So I'd also like to take a few moments to add my own personal reflections while I have the floor. Justice Duncan's journey to the Yukon began, like most, from away. A temporary stint to get away from the big city, in her case, Toronto. Having articled and worked her way up in the firm McCarthy Petro, she chose to leave the life as a partner in a large firm and begin her practice with the Federal Department of Justice. Working out of the regional office of Ontario, Suzanne took on a broad range of files in health, corrections, public safety, amongst others. In 2004, though, she took on a temporary, one-year opportunity in the Yukon to conduct criminal and regulatory offense prosecutions. 1 year, however, it would not be. Giving up her fancy downtown Toronto life, Suzanne took on the very reasonable step of acquiring a very old and quite eclectic trapper's cabin. Now, there may have also been some unconfirmed sightings of Suzanne gold panning down by the river, likely to make up for her lost Toronto income. In 2006, Suzanne accepted a position as director of the civil side of the Yukon office. It was a small group. Work was often agented out. Quickly, Suzanne made her mark, taking on as much of the file work as she could get her hands on. In a short period of time, Suzanne ensured that almost all of the federal civil litigation files with the Yukon focus were handled directly out of the Yukon office. She also began building strong ties throughout the Yukon. She was committed to providing federal legal services locally because she knew that understanding the local context of the Yukon was the only way to provide excellent legal services. I had the privilege of working with Suzanne just shy of 10 years. She was my boss when she first hired me here. She was my colleague when she left management to return to full-time practice. And she became one of my direct reports when I took on the management functions I have now. She left soon after that, so I'm not sure what to make of that. Step back in. In short, I had daily opportunities to witness Suzanne through a number of professional lenses. She was an even-keeled boss, a trusted colleague, and a stellar employee. She was a natural leader, guiding teams on many files. She rarely missed work for any reason, not even a well-deserved holiday in many cases. Suzanne never said no to file assignment, and she loved the legal challenge. She delivered on every occasion, and she's made a significant contribution to the development of modern Aboriginal law here in the Yukon, amongst other work done. If measuring the success of a judge was only based on legal capacity and strong work ethic, I'm certain Suzanne can be said to be the perfect choice for this position. Now, after the recent and untimely passing of Justice Gower, it gave me pause to consider what it means to be a judge. And I suspect others lawyers in the room and in the Yukon did not really know Justice Gower. He was someone, for me certainly, where I only had structured communications with him, inside of a courtroom and only with the utmost legal gravitas. Judges, I must have surmised, lived in a vacuum and really only in this courtroom. But through Justice Gower's memorials, a picture emerged of a person with a fascinating life beyond his life as a judge, beyond the life of this courtroom. And it became clear that it was also all those other aspects of his life that made him a great judge. Now, I've had the distinct privilege of getting to know Suzanne over the last 10 years. And Suzanne has many life interests beyond her passion for the law that will make her an excellent judge. Two in particular stand out for me. The first is that in my 10 years of working with Suzanne, she's almost exclusively used her holidays to explore the Yukon, enjoying both the geography and the culture that are available to us here. And the second is that Suzanne has an incredible curiosity about people. Having attended many professional and social functions with Suzanne, I've always been impressed by her interest in people and her ability to engage with people from all walks of life. She's truly interested in everybody and in their perspective on issues. So it strikes me that for a judge to have a passion for the jurisdiction in which they operate, and coupled with that, a love for connecting with people, that is certainly a judicial asset. And with all that said, I suspect it won't take long for Suzanne to develop her perfect judge poker face, and others to wonder if the only thing that occupies her time is judging us and our legal interests. So I look forward to seeing that judge poker face in the near future. On behalf of the Department of Justice, and especially those who work with Suzanne closely, we wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bental. So now it's time for the judiciary to shine. I don't know how they're going to do it after those great speeches from all of you. Chief Judge Peter Chisholm.
I don't think I have much material left to work with. Here it goes. I'm so pleased to congratulate Madam Justice Duncan publicly on her appointment to the Supreme Court of Yukon. As has been said, this is a momentous occasion for Suzanne, her family, her friends, and this ceremony is a time to recognize her achievement and our great fortune. Suzanne possesses many wonderful qualities. One of the things that impresses me the most is that she is never one to forego a challenge. She has led an interesting path. Some might say she's done it all, from Toronto to the Tombstones, from the Bay Street to the Boonies, from Civil Lit to the Dawson Pit. And from Queens to Kwunlin-Dun. She's a hard act to follow. One of the challenges that she undertook years ago was to leave temporarily the comfort of her civil litigation practice in Toronto to spend a number of months learning the criminal litigation trade in the Yukon. During that stint, Suzanne displayed her strong work ethic while also demonstrating that she is a quick study. And although a senior Hogtown civil litigator, she was nonetheless willing to deal with the smallest criminal file if requested. Suzanne is very highly regarded, both professionally and personally. I can say as much as I've had the pleasure of knowing her in both capacities. One of her many positive attributes is the ability to make friends and to make people generally feel comfortable around her. For a judge, the ability to put people at ease, or in some cases to disarm them, is of utmost importance. The courts are increasingly dealing with unrepresented litigants, people involved in stressful litigation without a lawyer and without much or any knowledge as to how the legal system functions. Suzanne comes to her new position with the tools to help guide such litigants through the court process within the bounds of what the law permits. She also, in my view, is able to be firm in her approach when necessary. Would that last part be accurate, Ray? Another of Suzanne's strong suits is her humility. I've never once seen a hint of arrogance from Suzanne. She possesses a great legal mind, but is very humble about it. She strives for excellence in her work and has developed a well-deserved reputation for good judgment, integrity, and fairness. And as has been said, as much as her appointment is a tremendous gain for the judiciary, it is, on the other hand, a very significant loss for the bar. Suzanne has given significantly to the legal community as a whole, from her contributions to the executive of the Yukon Law Society to her wise counsel to Yukon Legal Services. She has consistently dedicated her time to improving the legal landscape, I should say, in the territory. From everything that I know of you, Suzanne, you will be an excellent judge. I would be remiss in not mentioning Ray Hall, Suzanne's partner. He has supported her for many years in her various work and community endeavors. I think that Ray's introduction to the world of lawyers was eye-opening. All I can say, Ray, is that if you thought the first chapter was odd and bemusing, strap on your seatbelt for what lies ahead. And finally, Ray, I don't know if you've seen any change in the household dynamics since Suzanne's recent appointment. If you haven't, you may yet. Living with a judge, especially of the Supreme Court ilk, can be a challenging experience. So if you ever need to drop by for a chat, congratulations.
Now for the response. Justice Campbell.
I'm not even gonna respond to that. It's truly a pleasure for me to welcome Suzanne, Madam Justice Duncan, to our bench. Suzanne has been a colleague and friend of mine and of Peter for the past 15 years already. Peter and I met Suzanne during her first visit to the Yukon. Our paths crossed briefly on the Grizzly Lake Trail in the Tombstones at the end of the summer in 2003. The mountains must have worked their magic on Suzanne because the very next summer she was back to the Yukon to work at the Federal Department of Justice for a few months. That is when I had the privilege to work with Suzanne for the first time. It seems that she really enjoyed her experience because she accepted to come up to the Yukon once again in 2005 to work with the Federal Prosecution Service of Canada. Even though civil litigation was Suzanne's main area of practice, her strong litigation skills, her sharp legal mind, her good judgment, and her hard work served her well, and she quickly adapted to her work as a Crown prosecutor. Needless to say that she fit right in right away. I was also very fortunate to work with Suzanne again from 2013 to 2018 while at the Federal Department of Justice here in Whitehorse, where Suzanne occupied the position of General Counsel, not only for the Yukon, but for the entire Northern Office. She was respected, admired, and very much loved by everyone in the office, including me. Her always well-reasoned and thoughtful opinions carried a lot of weight, not only in the North, but within the entire Department of Justice. Suzanne was not only a strong advocate, she was also open and ready to listen to others' ideas and opinions. Suzanne was, and still is, a workhorse. She carried on her shoulders many of the most important and complicated files for the Northern Office of the Department of Justice. Nonetheless, She always had time for a good laugh with her colleagues and would not say no to an outing of musing and dancing at some of Yukon's finest establishments. Suzanne is not only a tremendous jurist, she's also someone who embraces life. She is an avid runner who has participated on many occasions in the Yukon Road Relay. Suzanne also has an adventurous spirit. She enjoys hiking, camping, and boating with Ray and their friends. As an example, a few years ago, Suzanne and Ray took up canoeing as a means to further explore the Yukon. Since then, it is my understanding that the two of them have enjoyed some beautiful trips on a number of Yukon rivers. However, only time will tell if Suzanne's appointment as a judge will convince Ray to do as she says, or if he will dare dissent, as he has apparently done so on occasion. Next time Suzanne tells him how to maneuver their canoe as they approach rapids. Anyway, one thing I know from Ray is that he will provide strong and calm support to Suzanne throughout her judicial career. Socrates counseled judges to hear courteously, answer wisely, consider soberly, and decide impartially. I have no doubt that with her many qualities as a person and as a legal practitioner, Suzanne will easily bring to bear this wise advice into her daily work. Suzanne, I'm glad to have once again the chance of working alongside you. Congratulations on your well-deserved appointment. I know you will be an outstanding judge.
Ready?
I want to know who put us at the bottom. Now, fortunately for all of you, because everybody's covered so much, that makes my speech short. Unfortunately. All I could say is he's been redrafting over here. Suzanne, be afraid. All right, but I will give you my words before we get to that horror. It is my very, very great pleasure to join with my colleagues and with all of you in congratulating Justice Duncan on her appointment to the Supreme Court of Yukon. I was fortunate to work with Justice Duncan at the Department of Justice Canada in a former lifetime. And indeed, I would like to take credit for her being in the Yukon. As we were so impressed with her as counsel, that we offered her that stint that she did here back when I was regional director. And I will say begging and pleading may have been involved, but you can understand now why we were so anxious to bring her to the Yukon. And I've been thinking back to those years at Justice, and trying to remember all that I said and did. Because while once upon a time I was Justice Duncan's boss, now she will be sitting on appeals as my decision. So proof of the old adage that what goes around, goes around. However, I have every confidence that Justice Duncan will distinguish herself as a judge in the same way that she has always distinguished herself as exemplary counsel. She brings to the bench a keen analytical mind and a dedication to making a difference. You have heard much about the honor, the integrity, the preparation, the compassion, all of those qualities that make Justice Duncan particularly suited to her new post. But I can tell you from personal experience that her work ethic is unparalleled, and we've heard a number of people speak about that already. But since her appointment, I have noted that her vehicle is always here when I arrive in the morning, admittedly not difficult as I'm not a morning person. But I am used to most often being the last person to leave. However, now when I leave, Justice Duncan's vehicle is still here. She's first in and last out. And it got me to wondering, Justice Duncan, whether Justice Vale might have led you to believe that your appointment required you to actually move into the building. Because it doesn't. But it's that kind of dedication that will ensure that Justice Duncan will serve the Yukon well as the newest judge of the Supreme Court. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the most exciting thing, for me anyway, about Justice Duncan's appointment. For a very long time, I was the only female judge, a mere 20% of the then 5 resident judges. With first Justice Campbell's appointment and now Justice Duncan's, our numbers have swelled to a full 50%. So we are now a full 50% of the now 6 resident Yukon judges. And so the takeover begins. Justice Duncan, congratulations and welcome to the Yukon bench.
I'm sure that you can respond to that takeover proposition. Deputy Judge.
Thank you. I was once a judge in this jurisdiction, but I'm now mostly retired. And one of my few remaining duties is to be trotted out from time to time to play the string at judicial swearings in. And so here I am. And of course, being the penultimate judicial speaker, Suzanne gets the last word, except when the Court of Appeal says so. But anyway, I'm the penultimate judicial speaker, and of course, worried that all of the good lines would have been delivered and all the jokes told, but I just feel so relieved. As has been noted, the ladies now outnumber the lords on the Supreme Court of the Yukon. And as Judge Reddy has noted, what with 3 of the 6 Yukon judges now being women, that's a 50% market share. And with Vale getting long in the tooth, there will likely be a further decline in the XY chromosomes ere long. This is a remarkable change from when I started to practice law, going on towards 50 years ago. Hard to believe, I know. Back then, it was feared that if women were to sit in judgment, offenders were going to be sentenced to 10 hugs and a bowl of chicken soup. And in the most serious of cases, they might add on a timeout. So here I sit, clinging to the wreckage of the good ship male privilege, and trying to think of something nice, or at least not politically incorrect to say. Appointed, or assigned rather, to shadow another judge. And like a shadow, you follow that judge around the court, but say and do nothing. And when I ran into Suzanne in January, I asked her how long she would be shadowing. And she said, until the chief thinks I'm ready. And I thought, but if you're just sitting there like a bump on a log, how will he ever know? But he knew. We can, of course, consider her legal career. Good lawyers sometimes make bad judges, but bad lawyers always make bad judges. Suzanne, at least, was a good lawyer. The time she appeared in my court, she was always articulate, reasonable, and on top of her file. What a refreshing way to practice law. Unfortunately for us, her talents were soon recognized by her employer, and she was spirited away from the criminal courts to do constitutional stuff. She has had a varied and distinguished career with some varied and distinguished partners. McCarthy and Tetro being the distinguished, and Vale and Campbell the varied. I suppose one ominous sign of what kind of a judge she's going to be, particularly for the lawyers appearing before her, is that, as has been noted, her last office within the Law Society was as chair of discipline. Keep that in mind. Now, one of Suzanne's legal claims to fame is that she did a lot of free or pro bono work for refugee claimants and others. Another is that she is the co-author of a legal text called The Law of Privilege in Canada. And I thought I would purchase a copy of this book to see if it was any good. I was astonished to find that it sells for $562, plus another $454 a year to keep it updated. It quickly became apparent to me how she was able to afford to do all that pro bono work. It quickly became apparent that she does indeed know a great deal about privilege. However, there is at least one favorable omen, which is that Suzanne likes bluegrass music. Well, you've got to, sometimes you have to struggle to find something positive. Anyway, you laugh about that suggestion, but I put it to you that anyone who can put up with that much banjo music is sure to be an open, tolerant, and patient judge. Willing to listen to damn near anything. Now, as you may have noted, if you've been to these clam bakes before, it's become customary when judges are sworn in to stack the jury box with one's relatives. And on a lot of occasions, that's been a very wise precaution, I must say. And even then, with some of us, the jury's been out a long time before deciding whether we should be admitted to the bench. But I don't think there are any worries this time. Now, what can Suzanne expect in her new career? She can, as we all have, expect to feel blessed to have had the tremendous honor and privilege to serve as a judge in Yukon. Suzanne, welcome aboard. May your love of God's chosen instrument, the banjo, bring you that final small portion of joy that being a judge fails to deliver. Remember Peter Cook's old sketch about the coal miner who said he could have been a judge, but he didn't have the Latin. Luckily, you had the Latin, and with just a little more luck, you will have a long and distinguished career as a judge.
Justice Duncan.
Oh, thank you. Well, Chief Justice Dale, fellow judges, Chief Gill, Donche, Mr. McPhee, other distinguished guests, colleagues, family, friends, thank you for your patience, first of all, for sitting through all of that. And thank you so much for being here. I first acknowledge that we're on the traditional territories of the Kwamandun First Nation and the Tonquachon Council. To me, this acknowledgement is a commitment to reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. A recognition that we all need to learn honestly about our history, understand its impact on the present, and continue to build partnerships and bridges of healing towards a new relationship in the future. I wanted to thank everybody for your incredibly and overwhelmingly kind words today. And also thank you to all of you who sent messages on learning of my appointment. I'm really grateful for all your thoughtfulness and support. I'm also fully cognizant of what Judge Hale said at Justice Campbell's swearing-in ceremony, that this is as good as it gets. So I'm enjoying this for now. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank everyone for coming. As I said, former work colleagues, lawyers, friends, neighbors, running buddies, other people from the community. I'm truly honored by your presence, and people in the other courtroom as well. Thank you for coming. I want to especially acknowledge people who came from further away. Justice Vale introduced them all, but I just want to go over again who they are and my thanks to them. First, my brother Mark, and my sister-in-law Kazumi, and my nephew Connor, who came all the way from Paris. I am so thankful and grateful that you came here all this way for this, and I feel your support, and even though we don't see each other as much as I would like, I feel it and I thank you for it. And also thanks for all the laughs this weekend. And my cousin Paul and his wife Karen and their daughter Leanne from Ottawa, thank you for coming. I've been trying to get you to come to the Yukon for years, and it took me becoming a judge to do it. I don't know what I'm going to have to do the next time to come up here, but hopefully the Yukon will speak for itself. I really want to thank you as well for all of the times you let me crash at your place, especially after those 1 a.m. arrivals when the Air North flight got in at midnight to Ottawa. So thank you for opening your home to me for all those times. My friend Virginie Giselle, she's a talented, creative landscape architect from Toronto. We've been friends, as Justice Vale said, since we were 14. We share a love of books, flowers, and French cooking. Well, mostly her cooking and me eating. But again, thank you so much for coming for this. And my friend Jane Ross and her husband Cameron Menzies, also from Toronto. I was in undergrad at Queen's with Jane. We were housemates together for a few years, and we've stayed friends ever since. And I want to thank you for your incredible and incomparable support over all the years, and especially for not giving up on me in those days when I got lost in the towers of Bay Street. My friend David Finley, also from Toronto. Dave mentored me at Queen's Law School when we were in the same legal aid project, student legal aid project. And David recently retired from an illustrious career with the Crown Law Office in Ontario. And he's friends also with Ray Tucker and Sue Mueller, and has been to the Yukon so many times that I think he should be called an honorary Yukoner, especially now that he's been here in the winter. And not in the jury box, but someone who I want to recognize from further away is my friend and former justice colleague Anna Conville, who came from Ottawa. Her husband Chris Pratt and son Logan, who I think had just stepped out. Thank you, Anne, for coming. When I interviewed Anne for a job in 2007, I think it was, she came to the Yukon for the interview, to Whitehorse for the interview, because she'd never been here before. And she didn't know it then, but part of her job interview was me inviting her with Ray for a hike up a mountain. And so we went on this hike, and she was fabulous. She aced it, and she got hired, and we had a couple of wonderful years together, working together in Whitehorse until Chris whisked her off to Ottawa. But I'm really glad you're back here for a visit. Although he didn't travel far to get here, Ray Hall, my partner, I have to acknowledge, thank you for your unwavering support and patience, for taking care of all the essential things in our life together, for your very gentle authenticity, and for your inventiveness and creativity, and for always making me laugh, and especially making me laugh at myself. So I also want to thank my first supporters who are not here, my late father Lloyd and my mother Marjorie, who at 92 was unable to travel here today. I owe so much to them. They made financial sacrifices to give my brother and me a good education. They continually encouraged my love of reading, and Ray would say at the expense of more practical life skills. They passed on to me their commitment to lifelong learning and the value of hard work. They were both dedicated to public service, both in their paid work as educators, but especially in my dad's case as a volunteer in many community and educational organizations. I'm very sad they're not here today, but as the next best thing, at least for my mom, we are videoing this event for her to watch later on. And I just want to recognize the youth of today's society, who are two people behind the cameras, Jeremy Linville and Nishka Pajor, and they're mentored by Lance Burton, who's also here. I just want to say a couple of words about the youth of today's society for those of you who don't know it. It's an organization that works with high-risk youth, developing youth programs that have a positive impact on their lives. As an example, they publish now the Shakat Journal, which is a revival of an original First Nations publication that was created in the 80s, but it was mainly geared to tourists. Now, the Shakat Journal is a magazine created by millennials for millennials, but as they say, it's more than just a magazine. It also includes, its full name is Shakat Media, and it makes use of media, social media, television, radio, podcasting approaches to enable youth to connect and share perspectives and insights on things important to them to help them with their challenges in life. And it also provides youth with media skills that will hopefully lead to employment in the future. So thank you very much for being here today. I just want to say a little bit about judging. The primary role of a judge, as I see it, is service. Judges are here to serve individuals, businesses, governments at all levels in the Yukon by helping to resolve their legal problems. And we try to do this by listening empathetically and objectively, by attempting to understand the true nature of the issues, and by interpreting and applying the law impartially to make decisions that allow people to move forward with their lives. And although the traditional perception of a judge's role is seeing us preside over trials, in the judicial world of today, trials form only a part of what we do. Presiding over settlement conferences and other forms of dispute resolution, applications and summary proceedings, and case management conferences form a much larger part of our role now than in the past. And as former Supreme Court of Canada Chief Justice Brian Dixon said, to frame the role of a judge exclusively in the context of the adversary system is to impoverish the function of a judge. And this evolution is a good thing for access to justice. Facilitating dispute resolution outside the courtroom usually means a quicker, less expensive, and often more acceptable outcome to a legal problem. And in the words of another former Supreme Court of Canada Chief Justice Beverly McLaughlin, access to justice is not a luxury, it's not a frill. It's essential to maintaining public confidence in the courts. Justice delayed is justice denied, and justice people cannot afford is no justice at all. So I look forward to working with my colleagues and other justice partners in continuing to improve access to justice in the Yukon. This is not to say there's no place for trials, because sometimes the only way to resolve a legal dispute is through a trial. So whether a judge presides over a trial or some other type of hearing in the adversarial context, perhaps one of the most important and probably one of the most difficult roles of a judge is the delivery of reasons, oral or written. But reasons are central to the legitimacy of the legal process. They provide transparency. They ensure a decision is not arbitrary, that the case hasn't been decided on the basis of a judge's personal view, but on the facts as presented and on the law as correctly applied and interpreted. And if we fail in that, as Judge Faulkner said, there's always the Court of Appeal to fix it. But reasons make a judge accountable. And as stated by Hamish Stewart in the Canadian Criminal Law Review, reasons provide a basis for public and political debate about the justice of a particular decision and of the underlying law that authorized it. And in the simple words of the English Court of Appeal, justice will not be done if it is not apparent to the parties why one has won and the other has lost. For me, fulfilling these duties of service and accountability to this community is very important. I feel privileged every day to live here in the Yukon. As has been noted by Justice Campbell, I first came here in 2003 in August when I hiked the Tombstones with a group guided by Laura Cabot, who I think was here but I guess had to leave. At that time, she was a lawyer in the winter and a tour company operator in the summer. And Jill Pangman was one of our other guides. And this is when I first met Justice Chisholm and Judge Chisholm and Justice Campbell. That trip started me on the path of no return to Ontario, so I guess, except as a visitor. I was then lucky enough, as you've heard, to get a job with Justice Canada in Whitehorse and practice both civil and criminal litigation there. And I want to thank my former justice colleagues for their collegiality, support, good nature, hard work, and shared respect for the law and the courts over the years I practiced law with you. I then worked all too briefly as in-house counsel with Kwamandun First Nation, to Shawnee Thon, to Doris Bill, Chief Doris Bill, and all of the counselors, Roxanne Balavant, Executive Director, and all my other former KDFN colleagues, some of whom are here today, and the KDFN community for teaching and showing me so many things, such as what resiliency truly looks like, how much healing and human connection and good work can come from humor, how careful listening with open heart and open mind can lead to effective decision-making, and how much can be achieved through respectful and collaborative partnerships, and how it's actually possible for governments to get things done. But thank you for allowing me to be a small part of your organization for a short time, being a small part of your ongoing and incredibly inspiring process of reclaiming your nation's identity, for your reclaiming your connection to the land and to the river, and also for your commitment to improving life for your citizens through your status as a self-governing First Nation. Thank you. Speaking of the land and the river, the Yukon grabbed me from the beginning for the reasons we all know and have experienced. First, the incomparable beauty of this land that inspires us in our activities every day. Activities like storytelling, photography, farming, gardening, gathering, snowmobiling, skiing, dog mushing, snowshoeing, hiking, running, walking, cycling, horseback riding, fishing, hunting, trapping, mining, boating, canoeing, kayaking, camping, creating art and music and poetry, or even just a simple activity of being out there and appreciating your surroundings. What also grabbed me was the complex tapestry of this community: Indigenous people, recently arrived immigrants, old-timers, and those like me who have adopted it as their home, and the creativity that emerges from this diversity. And the caring that is evident with so many successful fundraisers for those in need, and for the spontaneous and helpful and ready support from friends and neighbors that still exists here. And so many things that happen in this community because of the strong volunteer base. All of this and more makes this land and this community so special. And as much as some of us don't want things to change, the Yukon is not immune from it. Societal change is inevitable. And as we know with rapidly advancing technological innovations, it's happening now at an even faster pace than at other times in our history. Legal disputes do not exist in a vacuum, as Mr. Benita said, but they're a product of social, economic, cultural, political, and personal circumstances. So it's essential for judges to try to understand these changing circumstances and ensure that these considerations are reflected in our decisions. One of the challenges, though, of remaining aware of societal changes is ensuring that as judges we do not compromise our impartiality or independence by becoming overtly involved in existing and emerging societal issues. I truly value my diverse life experiences, and I know it's crucial to keep having those experiences so that I can draw on them in my role as a judge. But equally important is the need to work constantly at identifying, examining, and re-examining my assumptions, perceptions, and values. I know that I must ensure that my personal views do not improperly influence my work. Striking a balance between drawing on human experience and protecting against bias that may be unconscious or unintended is essential. I take inspiration again from the words of former Chief Justice Dixon. The role of a judge, properly conceived, inevitably involves an attempt to understand the nature of the individual and the society in which they live. The legal doctrines that we have inherited constitute not the bare bones of a dead tradition, but a vital body of living experience. It is only where the law is interpreted by an independent judiciary with vision, a sense of purpose, and a profound sensitivity to society's values that the rule of law and therefore the citizens' rights and freedoms are safe. On that note, I want to thank all my fellow judges for welcoming me so warmly. Et je voudrais tout particulièrement remercier le juge en chef Léa et Madame la juge Campbell de m'avoir permis de vous suivre, de votre patience avec les questions et votre générosité à partager vos conseils et vos idées. J'ai observé dans votre travail les qualités de diligence, d'empathie, d'ouverture d'esprit, d'efficacité et de bon sens. Je sais que j'ai beaucoup à apprendre et je ne peux pas penser à un meilleur environnement pour y parvenir. So, quick translation. Chief Justice Vale and Madam Justice Campbell, I want to especially thank you for allowing me to follow you around as a shadow, for your patience with my questions, for your generosity in sharing your advice and insights. I observed in your work the qualities of diligence, empathy, open-mindedness, efficiency, and common sense. I know I have much to learn, and I can't think of a better environment in which to do that in. I also want to thank our assistants, Jean Reeves at the back and Marie Gagnon, for your incredible and thoughtful help in unraveling some of the mysteries of the fourth floor. There are still many I have not unraveled yet. And to our legal officer, Kathy Rasmussen, for your nuggets of wisdom and efficient research, and to all the hardworking court staff and registry for your professionalism, knowledge, and patience. So in closing, I hope that my commitment to service, accountability, understanding, and constant self-evaluation will provide at least some counterbalance to the inevitable mistakes that I will be making. I'm still in awe of the enormity of the responsibility that I'm assuming, and please know that I will work hard to earn public trust and be deserving of this great privilege. Thank you again for coming today.
Words of wisdom for all of us. Thank you, Justice Duncan. So that wraps up today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. There's a reception to follow at the Westmark Hotel, conference room number 1. Madam Clerk, please.
Thank you. Order report.
First of all, hi Mom. It's been a wonderful afternoon of tributes to Suzanne. Everything that they said in those speeches this afternoon I fully agreed with. They talked about her integrity, her absolute commitment to everything that she does, the respect that she has for people and the compassion. And they also talked about her great sense of humor, which we saw this weekend, enjoying this weekend of celebration with her as she became a Supreme Court Justice. Wish she were here. I wish Dad was here to see this too. You both these folks so very proud.
So I'm standing here in Whitehorse looking at the beautiful Grey Mountain, and I'm going to cry because I've been a friend of Suzanne's since we were 17, and I met Mrs. Duncan then and her husband, wonderful husband, Mr. Duncan then, and her brother, Mark. And when Suzanne and I went to Queens, and then Suzanne did a law, and then she came here and was seconded here, and she came back from this comment, and I said, you're never coming back to Ontario again, are you? You're going to come to the Yukon. And to know that someone as amazing as Suzanne is, Marjorie and Lloyd, that she is a justice of the Supreme Court of the Yukon makes me so proud. It makes my heart burst. It makes me cry. And I'm so glad that Canada has her and Yukon has her. And thank you for making her. And I feel incredibly fortunate to be her friend. And I send all my love. Thank you.
I remember Suzanne has always been someone I looked up to, and never have I not been proud of her, want to be like her. And now more than ever, she's such an inspiration to me as a woman in power, someone I want to grow up to be like, have as much influence as she does, have as much compassion as she does. She's really just a great person to have in your life, and I'm so grateful that she's part of my family. And I'm so proud of her today, more than ever. Congratulations, Suzanne.
Hello, Mrs. Duncan, Marjorie, if I may. My name is David Finley, and I first met Suzanne at law school back in 1983, and we have remained friends ever since, and for all the reasons that so many people today shared. Suzanne's a wonderful woman. She'll be a wonderful judge. I'm speechless because I'm a lawyer myself, of course, and I've attended many swearing-ins in Ontario, and I had the pleasure of having many of my friends become judges. Today's ceremony, though, was unique in that I felt a warmth and a love for a very deserving appointment that I've never ever experienced, and that's a credit to Suzanne. And may I say, I know Suzanne so well. Suzanne found herself in the Yukon. Her career blossomed ever more, and she found an absolutely wonderful partner in Ray. I wish you could have been here, but I hope this video and the video of the ceremony will demonstrate that.